Hello all, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a project update video for this 1/6 scale Armortek M4A4 Sherman tank. Since the last video update, the last of the external detail components have been added and the model is now ready for painting. We'll be going over these additions in this video. Starting with the model's tool posts, as you can see, all of the tool posts have been fabricated and added. All the tool posts you see here are scratch built out of sheet metal as well as wire for the little footman loops. All the components are bent and soldered together and are a staple on all of my American tanks. The Sherman, the M4A4, utilizes the same basic standard tool layout as found on the rest of the Sherman family. Namely, over here is the shovel. This is going to be for the axe, pickaxe head, the pickaxe handle, and the pry bar. All of the tools themselves will be added after the vehicle is painted. More information on that is to follow. The tool post mounts themselves continue on the aft part of the vehicle. This mount here is for the sledgehammer, and this mount down here is for the large wrench. As we can see on some of the tool components themselves, there are footman loops. The purpose of the footman loops is so that once the tool is put into its mount, a leather or canvas belt is used to strap around the handle of the tool and thus keeping it secured to the tank's deck so it doesn't come off while the tank is in operation. On the large wrench, that's a little bit different. Rather than the footman loop, it is held in place via a chain retained pin, which of course will be added after the vehicle is painted. Also, as of note, for builders who are building their vehicle representing that of a British Firefly, or even who are contemplating a British M4A4, I have seen this mounting position for the wrench in a slightly different location. When the British acquired the M4A4, they fabricated a large sheet metal storage bin in the back here. Because of the bin, the wrench location I've seen relocated on the top deck and was mounted adjacent to the sledgehammer. In addition to the tool post, the tank's tow cable mounting equipment has also been added. This is as per the real vehicle and is found directly opposite of the tool post. The tow cable mounting equipment consists of the following components. We have the tow cable clamp and two tow cable mounting cleats. All three components that you see here are straight off the EastCoastArmory.com product line, and the tow cable clamp itself is fully functional. Also, as of note, if we notice on the front portion here of the vehicle, there's no other tow cable mounting clamp to secure the tow cable to the front part of the vehicle. This is slightly different than on later versions of the Sherman. On this version of the Sherman, the clamp would only have been in the rear. The tow cable itself would mount to the clamp and then would snake around this portion here of the deck, locking into the two deck cleats, and then would come around this portion here and would be secured to the front of the vehicle via the U-hook, which are found on the front portion of the transmission cover. Later version of the Sherman, this was slightly different in that instead of mounting it to the front U-hook, there was another tow cable clamp which would have been mounted on this portion here of the transmission cover. Moving from the tool post, we get here to the most iconic part of the M4A4, which is that of the armored radiator cover. This component here is the most distinguishable part on the M4A4, and it is the only version of the Sherman family to receive this cover. The purpose of the cover is because of the Chrysler multi-bank engine. The Chrysler multi-bank, which would have been featured in this location over here, has a very large radiator. The radiator was so large that to stuff it into the vehicle, they needed to create two armored covers. One blister is mounted on the bottom portion of the vehicle, and that is discussed in one of the earlier videos. And as for the top portion of the vehicle, that cover was this portion here. The purpose of this portion was to protect the radiator, but also allowed for the radiator to be refilled with its coolant. This was facilitated with a single large hatch mounted in the center of the dome. The way the hatch is accessed, there's a small little pin similar to the fuel cap armor covers. The pin is pulled, the hatch is then opened. Now, on the inside portion here would be the radiator top along with the radiator filler cap. The M4A4 top deck radiator cover blister that we see here is a new addition to the EastCoastArmory.com product line and consists of the following components. We have the main blister base, complete with all of its cast texturing as well as cast numbers. The functional cover plate, which also too has its cast texturing on it. And finally, what's not shown in this scene is the small filler cap, which will be for the radiator. The filler cap itself will be permanently mounted to this component after the vehicle is painted. Moving on from the radiator blister takes us to the other fluid filler caps. What has been added since the last scene are that of the fluid identification plates that we see here. Moving on from the radiator blister takes us to the filler caps again. What has been added since the last scene are the identification plates for the fluid which would be used in the following filler caps. The filler cap identification plates are also found on the EastCoastArmory.com product line and have been available for some time. What has been added, though, to the sets is the addition of the gas oil identification plate that is intended for the Little Joe auxiliary generator. The Little Joe auxiliary generator used a pre-mixed gas oil type fuel, and that information is labeled with the following data plate. Moving up past the hull, it takes us to the turret again. Since the last video, the lift hooks have been added to the vehicle. The lift hooks again are also directly off the EastCoastArmory.com product line. On the Sherman, the lift hooks were an integral casting to the turret and were not welded on. As a side note, the hooks themselves were a little bit of a progression in that the original Sherman turrets were not intended to be hoisted up with the lift hooks. They were actually originally supposed to be hoisted up with the use of eyelets, which would have been bolted to the top portion of the turret. This is a direct carryover from the M3 Lee. Moving our way to the front portion of the turret, here we have the addition of another simple add-on, which is that of the East Coast Armory shark fin Vane sight. The Vane sight that we have here is the early production unit, and it's just a simple steel blade that is bolted to a mounting plate that's welded to the vehicle. This unit here is typically found on very early production units, and later on this unit here was redesigned with the more elaborate Vane sight that is typically found in later production units. It is not uncommon to find some early production Shermans that have been upgraded through all the modernization programs that were going on to have two Vane sights side by side of each other. The logo was scratch built and then was flared into the turret's casting with that of bodywork. In addition to the foundry mark, the footman loops have been also added to this portion of the bustle. Also typical for these earlier production low bustle turrets is that of the small footman loops. Purpose of the loops is to secure sleeping bags or a large duffel bag in this location here. However, my model will not be receiving this bag. However, the footman loops are still present as they are permanently affixed to the vehicle. Moving up from the bottom portion of the bustle takes us to the spare antenna mount that we have here. Now, as of note, I always say this in my build videos as well as in my build blogs that are on the forums. This location here, I've seen a lot of model makers mistake its intention. I've seen a lot of model makers install the M2 50 caliber machine gun mount to this portion here. The Purpose of the confusion is because of the 4 bolts that we have here on the back portion of the turret. These same 4 bolts are found on the retracting pintle mount for the M2, which is found on later production vehicles. However, the machine gun mount was never mounted in this location here. This mount here was strictly for use of an extra MP48 spring antenna base. The purpose of the mount is in case the vehicle had a second radio and you would need the second antenna base. As for the machine gun itself, that would be mounted in this location here, just forward of the bustle angle. If you do mount the machine gun to this location here, you are incorrect, and it really does hurt the look of the vehicle. So, very important to keep of note to anyone who's modeling the M4 Sherman tank out there. As for the component itself, has been tweaked a little bit from the kit original. The kit does originally have this location here integrally casted into the turret casting, and it's actually very nice. The Armortek kit also supplies you with a laser cut steel disc that would be bolted to the location with 4 bolts, just like on the real unit. However, instead of using the kit one as per out of the box, I went ahead and wanted to add the little recess and sunk in feature, which is found on a lot of the early production units. To do this, the unit was built up with strips of plastic, which was then thoroughly blended into the bodywork via the putty. Once the sunken look was achieved, I went ahead and fabricated a new plate out of styrene and added 4 fake resin bolt heads for use of the mounting fasteners, which are found on the actual unit. Directly across from the spare antenna base mount is the main antenna base well. The main antenna base well that you see here is left pretty much out of the box with no mods added or needed for that matter. The well is very nicely done and is one of the best parts that are found on the Armortek turret. The only addition that I made was the addition of a small drainage hole, which is found on the bottom rear portion of the antenna well. Obviously, because of the sheer depth of the well, this portion here could easily fill up with water if left out in the rain. So the small little hole here, it's a simple channel that drains all the water from the well out to the exterior portion of the vehicle. As for the antenna itself, this is the standard EastCoastArmory.com static MP48 spring antenna base. Unlike my other radio control builds, in which the antenna base is actually connected to the vehicle's radio antenna and actually extends the radio range of the vehicle. Because this vehicle utilizes a 2 GHz radio, the extended radio procedure was not needed. By doing this, it actually goes ahead and saves an extra umbilical cord that would have to snake its way into the hull from the turret. Moving our way to the top portion of the turret gets us to the final details that were added. First, we'll start with the eyelet lifting mount nubs that we have here. Like I mentioned earlier, the Sherman's turret was originally designed to be lifted off the vehicle with that of eyelets that would thread into these nubs. Again, this is a carryover from the M3 lead, but the eyelets were never utilized as the idea was scrapped for that of the thicker integrally molded lift hooks. However, even though the eyelets procedure was abandoned, the nub mounts were left in the turret castings. This progressed up until the advent of the late high bustle Sherman turret, in which these mounts were thereby deleted. Because of the early nature of this vehicle, I went ahead and added the mounts. Mounts themselves are just simple round turn pieces of plastic that have been fused into the top portion of the turret with the body work. Last but not least, the final component that was added to the vehicle was that of the early style split hatch commander's copula. The copula that we see here is a new addition to the EastCoastArmory.com product line and features all the details that we see here. This unit here is the earliest rendition of the copula, and what distinguishes that is the early style M2 HB barrel clamps that we have here. Later on, this unit was deemed to be too fragile, and a folding version of the barrel clamp was developed. On the catalog, this Copula is offered with an option for either this version or the later version with the pivoting unit. Another feature that distinguishes this Copula from the later versions of the split hatch is that this version of the Copula here does not have the counterbalance springs. The hatch was just opened and closed without any aid from any type of spring or any other mechanical mechanism. Because of this, one complaint was that the hatches were very heavy to open, very similar to the hatches in the front, which was discussed earlier. The hatch was redesigned. The hinge mechanism was altered so that you have two big springs on each hatch, which facilitated and aided with opening and closing of the hatch and made it a lot easier for the tank commander. This version here with the grooves milled into the ring are typically found on low bustle turreted versions of the Sherman. Like with all early split hatch Copulas, on the front portion of the Copula is the vehicle's M2 50 caliber machine gun pintle mount. The pintle mount itself is directly integrally casted into the turret ring and would simply lock into this position here. All of the turret's exterior detailing is represented. This includes cast texture, lift hook, external periscope, as well as foundry and casting marks, which are found on both the hatch and the ring itself. In addition to the exterior detailing, the hatch's interior detailing is also present on both hatches. Currently, the interior portion of the hatch is not thoroughly painted yet. However, all the final touches will be added after the vehicle is fully painted. On the inside, the split hatch Copula breaks down as follows. On this side here, we have the headrest for the tank commander, a lift hand or a grab handle, as well as a locking lever. Purpose of the locking lever obviously locks the hatch in the closed state and prevents anyone from crawling on top of the vehicle to open up the hatch to drop in a grenade or to possibly shoot at the crew on the inside. On the reverse side of the Copula features the other hatch with that of the Periscope. The Periscope that we see here is not included with the kit. This Periscope here is from panzerwork.com, and like I mentioned before, it's highly recommended for use on the 1/6 scale models. Also included with the casting is that of the tank commander's headrests, which surround the interior portion of the Copula. And on this portion here of the Copula ring, we have the locking mechanism. What a lot of people don't know about the early split hatch ring Copula is that this ring here was actually able to rotate 360 degrees. Keep in mind, the original intent of this component here was for anti-aircraft use. And because of that, you would need to rotate the ring to get access to any position that the enemy airplane would be in. The way it worked was you simply loosen this grab handle here, almost like a vise, which would then allow the unit to rotate 360 degrees. Because of the airsoft firing capability, which was discussed in a previous video, getting access into the interior portion of the turret from the hatch is going to be a requirement. However, with the Copula fitted in this place here, that becomes a little bit difficult due to all the detailing that's on the component. So engineering the Copula in a way that is removable was necessary. One side effect of making the Copula removable, though, was that by doing so, I was actually able to make the Copula itself rotate just like it does on the real vehicle. The Copula itself is securely mounted to the turret so that you don't have to worry about it popping off on you when the vehicle is in operation. And this is facilitated with locking lugs similar to which is found on a Tamiya 1/35 scale tank. The way the unit operates is you line up the turret where the locking lugs disengage, and you lift off. As you can see, now I have ample access into the tank's airsoft gun if required. Also, because of the way the lugs are designed, I can mount the Copula on in reverse and have the 50 caliber machine gun pointed to the aft portion of the vehicle if required. And with that, that concludes this project update video for this 1/6 scale Armortek radio controlled M4A4 Sherman tank. If you like this video, stop by and like us on Facebook. And don't forget to check out EastCoastArmory.com for more 1/6 scale tank builds, as well as other 1/6 scale detail components. Thank you.